Talk like TED. The 9 public speaking secrets of the world's top minds. Let's get this started with. Hello, my name is Sean. I'm not Carmen Gallo, but I am going to go ahead and talk about Talk Like TED, those 3 sections of the book. I'm going to go ahead and try to turn this into this video so you guys can, well, either just want to go ahead and read the book, or you guys just want to see the highlights. Let's start this off. Firstly, this book and this video will be split off into 3 parts. First part being the emotional things, the advice. Second part being the novel advice, and the third part being the memorable device. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and find out how to talk like TED. The 9 super secrets. Let's start this off. Now, a little side note here. I'm going to use one TED Talk as a reference because that's a TED Talk that I've actually went ahead and got more experience in too. I rewatched it so many times. Let's start this off. Firstly, the emotional advice. My first advice, or at least the book's first advice, is to go ahead and unleash the master within yourself. Now, what does this advice mean, unleash the master within? This just basically means to go ahead and you have to talk about something passionate. Let's say that I'm passionate about maths, and my TED Talk is going to be somewhat related to maths. Then, well, you're going to have to go ahead and unleash the master within yourself by talking about maths, the thing you're passionate about. If you're asked to do a TED Talk about something that you have no idea about, well, the TED Talk people, number 1, maybe have accidentally thought you were someone else, or number 2, you actually wrote something about the topic which was somehow super accurate and super engaging, and they want you to talk about it, and you're not that passionate about it, then you're going to have to decline the TED Talk, unfortunately. Now, about that TED Talk I was talking about, the procrastination TED Talk, Tim Urban himself is a blogger, but he is a pretty big procrastinator too. He procrastinates so much, he even admits to it himself, that he's pretty passionate about it too. He goes ahead and studies it. And by studying it, he goes ahead and figures out that it's probably not the best ideal for him. Procrastination has actually went ahead and doomed him, but it's not that doomed of a thing that you can think of too. Now you have to go ahead and unleash the master within. You have to talk about something that's very passionate, whether it's science or AirPods. Yes, if you can somehow make a TED Talk about AirPods, please tell me in the comments below. The second advice that I'm going to talk about is mastering the art of storytelling. Now, storytelling, of course, is a pretty big fundamental of TED Talks. In fact, every TED Talk that I've watched, and every TED Talk that's probably exists, all has a little story inside them, too. This story is actually what's the hook. It's the hook that goes ahead and hooks the reader into your line of circle, into your line of ideas. And with that in mind, you can go ahead and rest assured, as long as you set a topic that is literally important to you, and it's important, if you set a story that's important to your topic, and it's the reason why you're going to be passionate about, that's usually the most commonly used stories worldwide in TED Talks, then you got yourself a good story. And if it's humorous, well, you got a bigger hook too. Our third emotional advice is you have to go ahead and have a little conversation. Also, more or less one-sided. Conversations are pretty much how you go ahead and give out ideas. When you have unlimited time and you can talk about any topic you like, then you can literally have a conversation, and you guys may talk about ideas, but since you have unlimited time, you might actually talk about outdated ideas after a few days. But fortunately for you, you guys are also allowed social media, so yay! Speaking of which, conversations on TED Talks aren't like you say something, other people respond, but instead of this, there's a little bit of a fourth wall, except that fourth wall is kind of broken. You talk a lot, but you also ask questions. And instead of the audience, each one by one responding, that would take too long, you have to force them to each think about the responses to these questions themselves. And one of the best ways to engage an audience too, conduct a survey and see how many people actually raise their hands. If literally almost everyone in the room raised their hands, well, that was just to make a point. That question was just to make a point. With all those emotional advice now aside, we can go ahead and now talk about novel advice. Now, novel advice isn't like reading novels. Instead, this novel advice is more or less how to go ahead and make a pretty big point, to have a jaw dropper. If you have novel advice, that just basically means it's a big advice, a big kind of talk that goes ahead and will most likely benefit you yourself. This isn't a hook. This is more or less the thing that goes the body. Think of a TED Talk as an Oreo. An Oreo has the black chocolates on the bottom and the top, and then of course the white milky cream in the middle, which makes it sweet and savory. Okay, back to TED Talks. Here, the Oreo is the TED Talk. This top part is the memorable advice that I told you. It's the hook. And now we're in the middle part, the novel advice. This is what you want your audience to remember. But of course, the ending is just as important as whatever's in the middle and the beginning, so you also have to have a good ending. This is the memorable advice, how you can go ahead and make it memorable. How do you go ahead and make the TED Talk memorable yourself is how you go ahead and make a great TED Talk. If you said something that's made the whole advice clear and also very memorable, then you've just succeeded in creating the greatest, if not the greatest, one of the best TED Talks of all time. I'm gonna use this Oreo analogy for a while, so get used to it. One of the first advice that's on the top of my head is you have to go ahead and teach that person something new. You have to teach him something new. If he's never heard about it, if you talk about like scientists have went ahead and found out that music playing is actually going to go ahead and make yourself more lighter. For another example, caffeine makes you more active and more memorable and less sleepy. Well, everyone knows that. Every adult in the world, at least, well, most of them, drinks coffee, so you don't need a TED Talk about that. That's just common sense. You have to talk about something new, something that the audience hasn't thought of, something you haven't thought of until recently yourself. Our fifth advice that I'm going to talk about is to have a jaw-dropping moment. Jaw-dropping moment as in saying like, hey, so it's like this, and then give out a shocking statistic or something like that. Say, well, millions of people in the world die from this one little cause. This will be memorable because everyone knows what this is, but they've never thought that this much can happen, and if some of them did, well, they haven't thought too hard about it themselves. You have to make it a jaw-dropping. Once you make them hear a statistic, think of them saying, I mean, I myself, whenever I watch a few TED Talks, I also got some jaw-dropping moments myself. Like, second up, our sixth advice I'm going to talk about is you have to lighten up the mood. Of course, some TED Talks are a bit grim. If you're talking about plague or Ebola, of course it's going to stay pretty grim. When Bill Gates himself made a TED Talk, at the start, he went ahead and showed a whole jar of mosquitoes, and then he opened a jar of mosquitoes and let it fly around the room and say, well, I have this jar of mosquitoes, and since people in Africa, they shouldn't be the only ones deserving to get infected, well, I'm gonna get these mosquitoes around and infect some of you, and everyone kind of got a jaw-dropping moment because who wants to go ahead and get infected with malaria? No one. And then Bill Gates later confessed that these are malaria-free. I brought malaria-free mosquitoes. Also, I don't think they enjoyed being bitten with red rashes. You also have to lighten up the mood, so that will probably go ahead and follow down the mood yourself. With that, you have to go ahead and make something lighter. You can't always have it dark. You always have to go ahead and make it light. If it's always dark, people are going to try to forget it. Like Tim Urban saying that, well, I went ahead and found myself in this grim place. And then later, he just even said this. I don't think any of you are procrastinators. And before that, he even made this little drawing saying, I made this brain scan. I'm going to show it to you here today, but I know you're not a trained brain expert, so I don't know if you're going to see the difference, but please just try to look at something. Switch a slide. This is the brain of a non-procrastinator. Yes, I literally this is what he drew. And this is the brain of a procrastinator. Of course, you have to go ahead, and it's pretty hard not to laugh at that, saying, I bought a brain scan, and gave out these drawings of a monkey and a person. And with that, you can go ahead and make sure, and rest assured, it's going to be the most memorable TED Talk like that. But then again, speaking of which, I haven't even hit on the memorable advice too. Now, on the last leg, I'm going to talk about the memorable advice. The memorable advice is how to go ahead and end your TED Talk, how to make sure that people remember your TED Talk yourself. Here are 7 rules out of the 9 is actually to stick with the 18-minute rule. Now, lots of people actually watch videos a lot, but usually whenever you watch shorts nowadays, lots and lots of people actually watch shorts. You can go ahead and remember something, but you only don't remember all of them. There's too many different stories to talk about, unless you're watching like a series of shorts on the same topic, like at Hello Pixels, President Start a Minecraft server kind of shorts. No, well, that might actually be memorable. I still remember episode number 100 and 200. With all this, you can still go ahead and rest assured feel what it is like to actually go ahead and talk like TED. Sometimes. But then again, if you watch too long of a video, like let's say 3-hour lecture, you're definitely not going to remember it on the first time. Lots of people actually realize that somewhere in between 10 minutes to 20 minutes is the perfect time for people to remember things. Too short, people aren't just going to remember it. 20 minutes, people aren't going to remember everything. 18 minutes is actually the maximum of a TED Talk. No one has more. No one, just because of their prestige, has more time to talk. Some people are actually have shorter TED Talks because, well, they really can't speak English that well, but 18 minutes is actually the perfect time for someone to go ahead and discuss an idea, make their point, and also make it memorable. So stick with the 18-minute rule. Now, our eighth rule is you have to paint a picture with a multi-sensory experiences. Now, what does that mean? You have to make sure that people remember it. You have to make pictures inside of their brains. Make a picture, draw it, make them think of something. Use descriptive language if you need to. But as long as you make them think of this when you're talking about this, well, you got yourself a great deal. And finally, our last advice of the day is stay in your lane. Don't try to go ahead and talk about something that you're not familiar with. Lots of people, I've actually seen lots of other people, some of my classmates, try to get out of their lanes and talk about things. And they've laughed inappropriately at times, but just because they didn't understand it well enough. They thought they understood it well enough, which is like saying that they only know about like 5 minutes of it, that they could talk about it. And this kind of failed their TED Talk themselves. Yes, we had a TED Talk at my school. It was a unit on public speaking. And with this, you can go ahead and rest assured you know how to talk like TED. Here's the key points. You have to be a good storyteller. You have to make your point, make it jaw-dropping, make it extreme. And you have to make it memorable. Make sure that people will remember it. And never, ever talk about something that you're not so sure about. And with that, rest assured, if you're having a TED Talk soon, well, this is your Bible. If you just want public speaking, good luck. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you guys soon. And so until next time, shout peace. Bye bye. Da, 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 da.